I tricked you. Ha 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 ha.
Being completely honest, I really do not like looking at the list of the best games ever. Among other reasons, I primarily don't like looking at them because so many of the highest entries on the list are games that, while extremely innovative and fantastic for their time, flat out suck these days. Now, to qualify for this list, a game couldn't have been bad back then and be bad now. It has to have, at some point, been really popular and critically praised even to this day. Some people may come at me and say things like, "You have no respect for the innovations these games brought to the table. They're still fun to play to this day." Which, let me say, while this is just my opinion, I feel like there are many other much better games that should be replacing these games on lists of the best games ever. So with that said, let's get started. Now, before you go down to the comment section and post that hate comment, hear me out. Unlike the rest of the games on this list, I actually do like this one. To this day, I believe that the original Super Mario Bros. Stands the test of time fairly well for a game that came out in 1985. This game being cemented as one of the most iconic games of all time doesn't really bug me. People talking about how incredibly excellent it is, though, does. To be completely honest, Super Mario Bros. Is one of the worst Mario games there is, but since it came out so long ago, it has all rights to be. So with that said, why do people often put this as one of the best games in the series? I mean, every other game in the series has better controls, more varied and just more levels, better power-ups, significantly better aesthetics, more catchy music, and much better storylines.
Leave my mama alone, you bad man!
Okay, maybe not that last one. The point is, basically every other Mario game has so much more to offer than the original, so I have to wonder, why do people so care about it, or at least, I would say that. I know exactly why people think it's the best. It pretty much saved video games as we know them. If it wasn't for the original, video games might still be treated as a fad to this very day, and our favorite medium wouldn't have turned out to be the juggernaut that it has today. So, thank you, Super Mario Bros. Maybe you don't deserve to be on this list. You know what? Never mind. Anyone who consistently watches the videos of Fawful's Minion probably saw this one coming from a mile away. To put it bluntly, Pokemon Red and Blue hold up horrendously, but not for the reasons you might think. Being completely honest, Gen 1 is actually my second favorite in the series, second only to Black and White. I like the Pokemon a lot, the region is great, the gym leader is probably the best in the series, and the crime organization, while not the best or even one of the best, is still adequate. You see, the lack of quality in Red and Blue comes in the details and inconveniences. By far the worst of these is with stats. In Pokemon these days, there are 6 stats: attack, defense, special defense, and speed. However, in Gen 1, both special attack and special defense were combined into one collective special stat. Despite this, it still provided the functions for both the Pokemon's special attack and special defense stats, meaning that a Pokemon that has a high special could both hit hard and take a blow, making it broken in a lot of cases. Because of this, the Psychic type, which had generally great Pokemon with great special stats, became incredibly broken, and since Dark and Steel didn't exist yet, and Ghost and Bug types were incredibly laughable, there was really nothing to stop the Reign of Terror. Basically, the only strategies to taking out a Psychic type were either use a Jolteon with Pin Missile and hope that luck is in your favor, or use a Psychic type and hope yours is better. Some other random reasons as to why Red and Blue suck the big one include the copious amounts of idiotic glitches, the sprites being butt ugly and even in some cases incorrect, you have to go into the menus to use HMs, some moves not doing what they're supposed to, for better and for worse, and the fanbase. Oh god, the fanbase. Out of all the games on here, the Gen 1 fanbase is by far the most annoying. Gen 1ers operate on the mindset that any and all Pokemon games that are from the era of 1998 to 2000 are perfect, and any Pokemon games that aren't from that era are terrible cash grabs just trying to capitalize on the success of their precious Red and Blue. And the only reason they believe this is because of nostalgia, nothing else. Thankfully, this game really doesn't get thrown around as one of the best games of all time on that main list, but the Gen 1ers are so freaking annoying and persistent that that fact is incredibly irrelevant. And considering that the games have remakes that are basically just them, but, you know, actually good, the fact that people act like they're the best just boggles my mind, giving them more than enough reason to put them on this list. In my mind, the first-person shooter genre exists in a sort of uncanny valley state. On the first side, we have the really early attempts like Wolfenstein 3D and Doom, which, while very dated, are still fun to play to this day. On the second side, we have the more modern shooters that are more realistic, but in turn, more fun. However, for the Uncanny Valley to be the Uncanny Valley, there needs to be something in the middle, and in this situation, that would be the shooters in the mid to late 90s, including Quake, Half-Life, and the number 3 entry on this list, Goldeneye 007 for the Nintendo 64. The fact this game is considered to be one of the best, if not the best shooter of all time gets me really annoyed. I mean, forget Half-Life 2, Team Fortress 2, and Fallout 3, the archaic bland shooter from 1997 is clearly the best. The way I see it, Goldeneye has two flaws that cripple it severely, the aesthetics and the controls. For the aesthetics, people will complain that it's the N64, they had limitations. But look at the first Turok game. Notwithstanding that it came out before Goldeneye, every single character looks way better than anything in Goldeneye. I don't care what console you're making your game on, a person's head should not be a cube. Second, and probably most importantly, the controls in this game just don't stand the test of time. This game came out in a time where making an FPS with one method of movement was considered a good idea. Going back to Turok for a minute, the primary mode of control is with the C buttons being used for movement and the analog stick for looking. Sure, it was kind of backwards and would have worked better if the D-pad was in use in some way, but for what it was, it worked pretty well. With Goldeneye, your primary controls are with the control stick as move and no dedicated look options. Your best bet was with R, and even then, using that stops you in your tracks, leaving you open to gunfire. Sure, it did have a mode that was more similar to Turok, but they screwed that up too. In Turok, to shoot, you press Z, which makes sense because it frees up space for movement. In Goldeneye though, you still have to press A, leaving you dead in your tracks while shooting once again. Goldeneye is often labeled as the first real step towards the FPS being viable on a console. I mean, hell, I didn't even mention its legendary multiplayer mode. But taking into account how bad it looks and the controls that were outdated the day it came out, I have to wonder why anyone can look at this and say that it's the best of its class. I like the remake though, it can stay. Out of all the major Nintendo franchises, Metroid has got to be the one that I've played the least of. I mean, I was willing to spend $60 on a copy of Prime Trilogy, so I must have at least some amount of affection for the series, but I don't see it becoming one of my favorites anytime soon. Out of all the games in the series I've played though, even though it is a small selection, the worst by far has got to be the first game of the series, Metroid on the NES. Out of all the games on this list, this one has got to be by far the worst. The amount of archaic design choices and bad layouts makes me wonder how, even back then, people acted like this was really good. Well, I guess I'll start with this. This game is the pinnacle of innovation not meeting quality in games. Sure, it was very, very ambitious for it to try to do a gigantic world that you have to explore like this, but the execution was terrible so it doesn't even matter. Do we judge games like Sonic 06 and Daikatana for ambition? No, we don't, so why do we do it for this game? There are several major problems in this game, so I guess we should start with the gameplay. In theory, it sounds okay. You're Samus Aran, a bounty hunter who has been sent by the Galactic Federation to the planet Zebus to take the space pirates and their leader, Mother Brain. The problems, once again, start with the details. First, as opposed to the 2D action style game that we get from, say, Mega Man, Metroid was really the first game in a subgenre of platformers called Metroidvanias. What this is a sprawling open-world game where you need to explore the area to find upgrades and backtrack to get through the game. Since it really was the first of its kind, though, it's missing many elements that make these games great. Most notable, there's no freaking map! Because of this, your chances of getting through the game without a guide and without getting lost at least for a little while are about 1,000,000 to 1. This is due to not only the lack of a map, but also because of the bland visuals too. Pretty much everything in the entire game looks exactly the same, leading to many instances where you think you're in one area, but you're actually somewhere else, leading you to make a bad move and end up in a giant pit or something along those lines. And don't even get me started on how you switch weapons. The presentation of the game is also really bad. I already mentioned how the aesthetics are not just bad, but detrimental to the game, and the sound is also terrible. Mostly, what this game calls music just consists of a few annoying bleeps and bloops with very little variation, and the same basically goes for the sound effects. All in all, let's just say there's a reason I'm using Super Metroid music for this segment. There are so many other little things I can say about Metroid, like, for example, how the combination needing to break countless random blocks to make any sort of progress, and the lack of invisibility frames turns the game into a cycle of dying and getting lost, but I think I've made my point. Metroid 1 might have been innovative and a pretty novel game back in the day, but that doesn't excuse terrible design and presentation that somehow feeds into the terrible game design. I didn't even know that was possible. I don't care if it started a great series. It's a bad game, and bad games should be forgotten. Simple as that. As I'm sure the majority of you have pieced together at this point, I have a bit of a soft spot for The Legend of Zelda. I love the worlds, I love the characters, I love the aesthetics, I love the music, I love the dungeons, and I love almost all the games in the series that I've played. However, when I say almost, I do mean almost, as there is at least one game in the series that I cannot stand to even watch, and that game is The Legend of Zelda on the NES. Where do I even begin with this one? Well, let's start with presentation, because why not? We're not the worst that I've seen on the NES, they could have done a lot better. Sure, the visuals get the point across, but that doesn't mean they look good, and the same could basically be said for the music. Sure, this game did give birth to one of the best songs in game history, but as I've said a million times, just because something was the first to do it doesn't mean it did the best overall, or really even well. Sadly though, that really is the least of the game's problems. Similarly to Metroid, this game's biggest problem is the overall game design. Once again, it tried to do something ambitious and made a really confusing, unfun game in the process. The majority of your time in this game isn't spent fighting monsters or solving puzzles in dungeons like you might be led to believe, but instead, wandering aimlessly around the overworld. I mean, without a guide, how are you supposed to do any of the random crap this game expects you to do? How are you supposed to know to bomb this rock? How are you supposed to know to burn this bush? The game never gives you any amount of hints as to what to do, and even when it does, it's out of context and makes no sense. And with a map that looks like this, you might know where you are in terms of space, but you'll never know where you are in terms of geography. No matter how many times I've tried to play this game, the only things I can do without a guide are get the sword and go to the first dungeon. After that, I have no idea what the hell I'm supposed to be doing. And all of this is not complemented by the gameplay. Since the controls in the game are so wonky with you only being able to move on a grid, the majority of the time you're barely managing to stay alive, and you will eventually die. It's inevitable. This game's difficulty is ridiculous. I mean, people talk about how hard Zelda 2 is, but good god, this game is plenty hard to begin with. With all that said, some people might be asking, all of those things apply to Metroid even more than this, so why is this number one? Well, it comes down to one thing: reception. While most people agree that the original Metroid is at least okay, to this day, most people still believe that The Legend of Zelda holds up great, even to the point of putting it on numerous lists of the best games of all time. Game Informer even once said The Legend of Zelda on the NES was the greatest game of all time. Oh, did I say once? I mean on both their 2001 and their 2009 lists. All in all, The Legend of Zelda is one of the most archaic, annoying, and just overall flawed video games I've ever played. While I absolutely love the legacy it left behind with undoubtedly my favorite game franchise of all time, the original game sucks and I will happily act like it does not exist. I'm the legendary sponge, and Zelda 1 sucks!